And we're live. It's meme time. We're just taking some time to talk about meme ideas and stuff. Judge sending black children to jail and homosexuality in Russia and other things on meme time. All right, we're live. It's meme time episode 14. I'm your host, Cham. We've got regular correspondents William and Kez, and I guess Ben and Jared have participated enough now that they can be considered regular correspondents.
Semi-regular.
Woot.
I'm a semi-regular. Starting to become semi-regular correspondents. Ben and Jared.
Like with dinner time, you know.
So, what's our first topic for tonight, guys? William, do you want to start us off?
I guess I can.
All right, William, take us.
All right.
Take us
So, mine is about a judge. His name is Mark A. Ciavarella, who basically has been sentenced to serve 28 years in jail after being found guilty for taking $2 million $2 million in bribes over a period of time to basically sentence children to harsh or harsher than normal, I guess, jail sentences in privatized prisons institutions. And basically, it was him and I believe another judge as well who were kind of found guilty of this. A colleague of his was Judge Michael Conahan, who together they had received over $2.6 million from privately run youth centers in Pennsylvania, basically to send children, usually for kind of lighter, not significantly long times in terms of, I guess, prison sentences. They might be something like 3 months or 90 days or something like that for fairly not particularly great crimes. One instance was a teen was sentenced to 3 months for creating a MySpace page that mocked their school's assistant principal, and one was a teen sentenced to 90 days for getting in a schoolyard fight. But basically, these were all sent to private prison institutes, which profit off of having basically more prisons in them. So I guess kind of the crux of the topic is private prison institutes are a bad idea, just a horrible idea in general to have an institution that basically feeds off of and gains its profit from having people in jail.
Well, I mean, in the way that, or one of the things that I got from at least maybe the article that you posted or one of the other articles is that he was basically getting bribes to basically fill up their detention centers, help fill up their detention centers. So
Exactly.
So I guess not only are, you know, the private institutions, clearly there's a conflict of interest there when they're, you know, giving bribes to judges to send people to prison, but also they're, because it's a private organization, and I assume they get paid. Do you know who they get paid by? Do they get paid by the state or for the number of people that are in the prisons?
I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I know in some instances, at least, they use basically the prisoners kind of for almost like slave labor in the essence of having them produce products as kind of part of their prison work, for which they pay them a pittance, basically, like less than $1 an hour.
Yeah, I mean, at
minimum. There's also some instances where I don't know if they do this in federal, in like actual non-profit prisons either. I know there's some instances where prisons actually charge the prisoners for their stay at the prison. So basically, once you get out, you basically get a bill for like the food and everything that you've used, which is a great way, I'm assuming, to get people right back into crime and to pay off what they owe. So I don't. It's a sickening idea to have an institute where people gain. I mean, they get their profit from not rehabilitating prisoners and having high recidivism rates and stuff like that. It's a terrible idea if you want to actually deal with deal with getting lower prison populations, getting less crime in the street.
Yeah, so I assume at a bare minimum, filling up these detention centers and prisons, um, is benefit to them in that they have basically slave labor. The more people they have there, the more slave labor they have, and potentially they may be making money they may be getting paid by the state or something based on the number of prisoners or something to that effect.
What were, Jared, I know you had something too kind of related with that. What was that?
Well, yeah, I had actually not heard about this this particular judge, but it only leads the kind of current system we have to lend itself to that kind of abuse, especially given any sort of accusation of type of slave labor, which ideologically I agree with putting prisoners to work. If they have a debt to pay to society, do something for the society. But the the wider point was Eric Holder came out and for the first time kind of took a backward stance on where the DEA stands, not the DEA, but basically the federal government stands on looking at low-level drug dealers and basically those that have no prior history and really don't have any ties to cartels or whatever they don't want to define as organized crime. They can reduce the minimum mandatory sentencing, which apparently is the problem. A lot of those that were forced to serve a minimum of 10 years fell into the category. I think it was something like 60% of the people had no priors and basically are serving 10 years solely because that is the federally required minimum. So, I mean, the big step is for the first time they're coming out and verbatim saying that mass incarceration is not fixing the crime problem. It's not rehabilitating these people. It's not working. We're entering the 5th decade of the war on drugs, and it's time to try something a little different. So they're easing up, basically, on the low level, and that's a huge thing to see happen right now. And now I'm curious if it has anything to do with scandals like this judge, other abuses within the incarceration system.
And it's definitely, I think this is kind of an older case. I mean, they might have hit the verdict recently on it with this particular judge, but I think it's back from 2011 that he was actually first arrested for it. But I mean, I would imagine that this is kind of an excellent example, an excellent kind of reason to, if you have cases like this, to kind of reevaluate is sending people to prison for nonviolent crime.
I really
to be with for long periods of time, to be with violent prisoners, is that necessarily the best way to handle the situation?
Yeah, not only in this story is there just blatant racism about the young black men that were persecuted for their actions, but it's a total assault on free speech as well. One of the teens that was arrested made a MySpace page just mocking a school administrator, which I actually have some personal experience in. I've made a bad photoshopped image of a vice principal and nearly got expelled from my middle school, and because I put it on the web. So,
really? I mean, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of it from that angle, but yeah, I mean, and that kind of goes into Cal. What was the name of that kid? Justin.
Should you say his full name on?
What's up?
Justin Bieber.
Yeah, Justin Bieber. That put up that salacious photo of Vanessa Hudgens and just this.
There's something like Hawkins or something really.
The kid in, what was he in San Marcos?
He lives in New Braunfels, Texas. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was in jail for like 5 months for very sarcastic and brief comments on Facebook. He didn't get arrested. Yeah, he didn't get arrested until a month later, and he was held with a $500,000 bail. And I don't know if it's even been released who the donor was, but an unknown donor gave it, got him out, posted bail.
I mean, basically, the MySpace page is just pretty ridiculous. I mean,
nobody even uses MySpace anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly this is an old case, but simply communicating online is not intent to commit any sort of crime or cause any harm. I mean, it's okay to make jokes at people that you're having issues with, like, you know, an angry teenager might in the school system. That doesn't mean he's actually going to hurt anybody. So that's.
Ben, I'm losing you. I can barely hear you.
Okay. Well, we can move on.
Well, I guess. So, what's the solution to private prisons then? Because clearly,
remove room for profit. Nobody should be gaining from this.
Yeah, there should. I mean, there should be private
should be
prisons.
working. There absolutely shouldn't be. If you're outsourcing, somebody's making money on what you could be doing yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I'm more of a fan of. I mean, again, I don't know all that much about, I guess, the science behind rehabilitating prisoners, but I'm much more of a bigger fan of things like education programs and drug counseling and anger management and those sorts of things. I know therapy is not supposed to be that particularly effective on psychopaths and stuff like that, but I mean, I think rehabilitation is kind of the main goal. I know that punishment should probably, for most people, need to be a part of it to satisfy the population, but I think rehabilitation in general is kind of the best way of going about it. And I think the idea, if you're going to have like a perfect society, I think the way you should be treating prisoners is to not just to punish them and throw them with a bunch of other violent people and let them become more violent and better criminals. It should be to try and transform them into people who you can release into society, and they don't go back. They become productive members of society.
Yeah, I agree with that very much. Anything that's a non-violent crime, I believe that rehabilitation should be the first step, and that resources should be made available to try and make those people more productive members of society.
I mean, I think even with violent crime, I think that's the ideal. But that always gets into kind of a. There's always, especially with like victims' families and stuff like that, there's definitely going to be kind of a desire for punishment, severe punishment for people like rapists and murderers and stuff like that. But I still think the main goal, no matter how severe the crime, should be to someday at least have the hope of getting them back out on the streets and being normal members of society.
Empowerment through education.
Yeah.
Thumbs up from me.
The thing that I'm wondering is, like, I guess what brought about privatization of jails to begin with? Like, I guess there would just
rising costs in the early 80s.
I guess companies sprung up that offered to build jails for.
I would imagine if you have, I know having prisoners is an expensive proposition in terms for the government to have to handle. It's keeping prisoners around for, between health costs and stuff like that, and food and everything. It's an expensive proposition. I'm sure if you have, to some people's minds, especially politicians, if you have people stepping in saying, we'll take over this for you, they're probably more than happy to let them do it. I guess
one of the main points I think Eric Holder was making in their decision to kind of ease up was, I think the last statistic I saw, about 25% of all offenders are what we would probably consider low-level drug offenders, non-violent offenders, and they're looking at it now costing the state quite a bit. And I think, like I said, about 60% of those. I forgot where I was going, in all honesty.
No, this like that. As far as Eric Holder and the federal, like looking at federal drug offenses and curbing federal drug offenses, it's actually kind of impressive to me, considering the kind of streak that the Obama administration's been on as far as basically being horrible on civil liberties and being horrible on just about, everything that they've been working on lately. It's kind of impressive to me that they're actually making some stance that is slightly an improvement on something.
It's a reversal in policy. It's at least stop moving forward and a little bit backwards, which is a good thing to see. And And considering the Obama administration refuses to stop the spying in lieu of all of the questions being raised, it's been adamant they will not stop the train rolling, and here for the first time we see the brakes, and that's kind of cool.
So there's something. I guess with that we can move into. I just wanted to talk on the NSA topic because over which weekend was it? Was it this? It was the weekend before last. They shut down 19 U.S. embassies in the Middle East and Africa because of a broad terror threat and
yeah, we were speaking about that the other week.
Yeah, and they had Senator Sack, but I guess more the reason that I wanted to bring it up is because they over the last couple weekends they've had on the Sunday morning talk shows like Meet the Press, they've had senators who are it's kind of the same senators who are the old guard scumbag senators and representatives who are for the security state and are for the NSA and for spying and CISPA and SOPA and all of that stuff. But like Senator Saxby Chambliss, Representative King from New York, I can't remember his first name, and Representative Dutch Ruppersberger were going on them and talking about how the terror threat that they were saying was very credible is a justification for the NSA security state, which, considering the fact that everything that I read, it was basically just a blanket global travel alert that was like at some point in some time some terrorist attack could occur in the next weekend. I don't see how that's any justification for the NSA security state.
It's not. It's just one more rising thing to justify the overall fear about it and not to really question what they're doing because they're doing right by you. I mean, all of these terrorist threats revolved around the end of Ramadan, the celebration of Eid. Basically, they did their fast to God. They did to God what they should, and the West, ignorant of Muslim traditions, I think, just assumed it would be a hotbed. Now that they're free from their obligations to God, they can pursue jihad. It was my personal take on it. And interestingly enough, I did see on InfoWars there was purportedly supposed to be some attack in Vancouver, California, as well as Austin, Texas. And if it didn't happen on the 6th of August, it would happen on the 27th. And
so we still got 2 weeks to be.
Still got 2 weeks to see, though, but I did not see any backing evidence to even hint at why they would have pulled that date out of Al-Qaeda's act.
Well, there's one, I don't know when it's happening, but there's one thing that I've been seeing posted repeatedly on InfoWars and I think IntelliHub maybe, a couple of the different conspiracy theory websites where it's the Boy Scouts Jubilee or whatever they have. There's supposed to be a they've moved the Boy Scouts big yearly annual event for the first time in X number of years, and so that's supposed to be and there are going to be terror drills going on around the Boy Scout event. So there have been a lot of people talking about that being a possible false flag attack.
To prevent the terrorist attack, they moved it to Fire Island.
One thing to keep in mind is kindergarteners from 2001 are just graduated from high school and are going to be able to vote this year. So we have our first round of voters that have never really experienced the world pre-9/11.
Oh yeah, pre-9/11.
Mostly a world at war.
Yeah, but where would they land though? If they're so used to all this stuff, maybe they're just eh.
They don't give a shit.
So I mean,
Yeah.
So I mean, what we'll see is that while we're growing up and we actually move into power and we have more of a libertarian bent, then there's going to be all these kids of this new generation growing up rallying against us, being like, "Damn, our parents are stupid with their free speech and freedom of liberty. I want more government."
That's
When I was young,
Kill them all.
Ah,
we had a police state, and I want to go back to that.
that's what the kids are gonna say. I remember the good old days of NSA spying.
I remember.
Wait, did you say there are trash cans in the UK they're now having to dismantle that would scan data from your cell phone and tell you how close you... That freaked me out. I mean,
Wait, what is
I
that?
always knew the UK
trash
had the
can?
Big Brother. Wells was not far off, but trash cans in the financial district of London would track where you were, how long you were at shops, if you shopped at different stores, so businesses actually would gain access to this and see that you spent only 5 minutes at their store but went and purchased somewhere else.
I think that's a good reason to get on the Catherine Albrecht. I don't know if anyone except maybe Kel has listened to Catherine Albrecht on Texas Liberty Radio, but get on her bandwagon of stopping RFID chips and stuff like that. That's her.
Yeah. I did that to my passport. They're not tracking me anytime, anywhere.
Now I gotta stop
Next,
hanging out in your trash can.
Step.
That's what I'm saying.
It's gonna be
Well, I think that's a good reason if there's trash cans that are spying on you in the financial district to take the
Just
trash.
throw it away.
Go throw them in through the windows of the financial buildings. Occupy London.
Yeah.
Wherever Occupy.
Preach it.
Their Occupy movement. I just gave you an entire thing to do. Go do that.
Go do it quick.
So Kel, how about your topic on the
It's not really my topic. Will you read about what it is?
Okay.
I don't have anything.
In the grounds they're saying would not be just in the slightest. It'd be interesting to see how it plays out, considering the protests they're kind of starting to see over there.
But aside from that, the protesters over there are getting the shit beat out of them.
Yeah.
They're getting tortured in ways that we don't see in America. It's really awful.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about last week, or last time we did it, whenever, about how Russia, like, their past two gay rights parades have ended in bloodshed over, like, the past 2 years or something like that, because they just basically...
Yeah, and it seems
protesters of gay people beat the crap out of
but
them.
when you look at the laws being passed like this and the clandestine attitude of the Russian government, it just leads you to believe that this is, the bloodshed that leads to it's socially accepted violence towards them. Not just socially accepted, but government sponsored. And to see that, as we're going further into the 21st century, it's really disturbing to see a continent, a place that's supposed to be a global superpower, still practicing things like that. But I also wanted to bring it up. It's just to call out a lot of bullshit on a lot of otherwise good media outlets who, I'll even say Infowars and Russia Today, who Russia Today especially, who ignore this issue and don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. And when and these things that involve human rights and persecution for our liberties or civil liberties to be ourselves, they get ignored by these people that you can otherwise respect. But when homosexuality does come up, even some of these really respectable groups, because they are conservative and have sort of a more conservative base to lean towards, they choose to ignore when homosexuals are persecuted. And I wanted to call bullshit on a lot of libertarians and so-called conservatives who back down when issues of homosexuality come up as far as being, a liberty and a human right.
One thing I was reading is related to this. Canada kind of came out with an official statement that they will look closer at and look more favorably towards people seeking asylum, Russian citizens seeking asylum in Canada if it's related to homosexual. These kind of homosexual laws or homosexual persecution. Canada specifically has kind of said we're going to probably be more lenient in letting in accepting these refugee claims for asylum.
That's good to see.
Yeah.
Well, I want to build as many bridges with Russia as possible, but I do think this is something that if the United States is a bastion of civil liberties and human rights and freedom, that I think we should, hold out our, make this a strain in our relationship if they don't choose to correct it.
Instead, we're making Snowden the strain.
Yeah.
They refuse to extradite despite the fact we'd have no extradition.
Snowden, by the way, is going to be doing the cross-country skiing in the Olympics there. He's going to be able to do that. So he gets to represent that little section of the airport as his country.
That's when the application was due. That's all.
That's a good point, though, Kel. That as far as media outlets in America, like it just baffles me that homosexuality is still an issue. And there was I think someone brought up, Jared, you brought up the New York stop and frisk on an episode of The Daily Show. They did a contrast where they were discussing how black people were treated in New York versus white people, and how basically 4 out of the 5 black people that they brought on the show had been stopped and frisked, versus none of the white people being stopped and frisked. So, I mean, it's just, there's still, despite the fact that we're in the 21st century, there's still racism and bigotry towards homosexuals, which all of that completely baffles me.
I think the U.S. will have a similar problem in the near future because...
Yeah, what is...
I'm not sure.
There
I think the U.S. could wind up with a similar problem as Russia, just due to a lack of education about those sort of things. So many people, I think, in this country kind of just let the public school system teach their kids everything about something as intimate as sex and homosexuality and all those things. And parents really should take responsibility for that instead of passing that on to any government official. I think Russia, by denying the right to information for those people, is just going to cause more misery and suffering for those individuals.
They play it up like, they use the word propaganda, and they play it up like it's pamphlets that teach kids how to be gay and influence kids to be gay. What it's really against is just these pamphlets and these groups that reach out to say, hey, we understand how you felt at that age. We're here to, say that there's people to talk to and that you're not alone. And that's what they're going against. Those are things that keep people from being happy, from enjoying their life. It's really
I think it's ridiculous that this idea still persists that people can just choose to be gay. Like,
I do. Every time I look at a woman, I choose straight.
Yeah, I choose
every time.
Yeah, I always decide, you know what, today I'm gonna be attracted to women and not men.
I mean, the thing that cracks me up about like people who are threatened by gay people is that's removing competition. Like, I mean, it's not really an issue for me anymore. But it's like, if if a guy's gay, then that's someone that you don't have to worry about.
If every other guy was gay, I might be a bit more of a hit with the ladies. So.
Also, I have some gay friends, and they make great wingmen. They will scoop up women just easily and
it's like
just hand them
confidence,
over
right?
to you. It's amazing.
To that end, you don't have to accept homosexuality at all. You just have to put up with the fact that it's going to exist, and not react against it. In all honesty, as sad as it is, it doesn't always have to be about accepting and taking everything in and wanting to share everything. But you at least put up with it and realize that if it's not out there to hurt you, then you should let it be as it is to you.
Well, and I mean, obviously, the elephant in the room, I guess, is that we didn't bring up is that, religion is probably the basic reason why there's still prejudices, certainly against homosexuality. I don't know about race.
Well, I was talking about this to you last week, Champ, and that's that conservative politics are going to stay dead and stay viewed upon as like the fringe and old-fashioned politics until religious morality and basically religion overall just loses its death grip on it, which is, I said, inevitably going to happen probably in 20 to 30 years because religion as a whole is just dying off. It's just not popular. It's not as cool as other things are to live for. and eventually eventually it probably won't be the Republican Party, but I do think the religious right will lose its co-option of conservative politics, and it will go back to a more constitutional, libertarian, freedom-seeking sort of.
I don't see any way possible that the Republican Party can survive, because they just do everything. They seem to just do everything in their power to alienate every group other than old white men. And
that's the idea.
Do you guys know if there's a Facebook page we can pray for that on yet?
What's
Yeah,
up?
I mean,
I said, do you guys
I
know
don't-
if
I don't think
there's a
they're
Facebook page we can pray for that on yet?
You got a real low voice.
yeah, I
Can't
can't.
hear you.
All right, forget it. It's just
Oh.
I don't think that the Republican Party is going to disappear, but I think it's not going to have the same I think in the future, because I was reading something not that long ago about how they're finding that most younger Republicans, like maybe high school and college age kids, still might be in favor of like the lower taxes and less government interference in economics and stuff like that, but the actual approval of like banning gay marriage and stuff like that amongst younger people just isn't there. So I think as the older guard, I guess as you put it, of Republicans is going and dying out, it's not gonna. I don't think that's gonna last for more than a couple.
Yeah,
But the neocons took that in a new direction.
Intolerance is uncool, and kids, there's nothing worse than being uncool. And so, what I'm saying is today, if you do, if in class you make like a joke about a gay person, like people aren't gonna laugh and be like, that guy's funny, that guy's cool. Now, it's incredibly uncool to be that way, and there's nothing worse to a kid than to be uncool. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's good.
Being cool and tolerance.
Well, that means society had enough.
tolerance is cool.
I was thinking actually the other day about how hard life was before cool came around. And I think we have Miles Davis to thank for that. But I mean,
The Fonz.
think about like Humphrey Bogart. I mean, the guy isn't really a good actor, and he's not really good looking, but everybody loves him in his movies. And they didn't have the word cool yet when Humphrey Bogart was around, so people couldn't explain really why they felt the way they did about Humphrey Bogart. So when the word cool came along, it suddenly described what people had wanted to describe, which is just like a way of being that's just, beyond and on the cutting edge. Thank God that came around.
Yeah, Humphrey Bogart was like the Cinnamon Toast Crunch of decades ago, where nobody could see what was so great about it, but they still loved it.
And still, does Cinnamon Toast Crunch still use that weird old guy as their
Captain Crunch?
No, it's like a
Like
baker.
chef. He's the chef.
Admiral Crunch. Anyway, back on point. One of the coolest things I thought about the unconstitutional decision from the federal New York judge on the New York City stop and frisks.
That was the point like 30 minutes ago.
Well, I don't know what we're talking about Captain Crunch for anyway. But I'm always interested in racial discrepancies. I like the statistics of it, and one of the things they found is no matter the neighborhood these stop and frisks were performed in, it was always minorities. Always the majority were the minorities. Even if it was a low-crime, high-income, mostly white neighborhood. 9 out of 10 were minorities being pulled over, despite that statistically being almost impossible.
Well,
Anomalous.
it makes sense, though. What were they doing in the neighborhood?
Exactly, but what are they doing in the barrio? Let's stop them there,
Yeah.
too. Oh, they're all in the barrio.
That was a joke,
Oh,
but it
God.
was a joke because it
I'm
is
saying.
it's
It's the mentality.
logic, yeah.
It is the mentality there, and
What are they
that's
doing
why
in
it's
this
deep.
neighborhood?
And 195 pages that she wrote down this very slamming report, and I just think that's more to the point of this kind of institutional imprisonment, the police force, and I mean a lot of laws going to support it. If we can see it from the top, kind of come down federally, that's a great thing to start seeing. It's just a great reversal because that case I think stemmed from a 2008 lawsuit. Which finally made its way to the Supreme Court. And we've only really been seeing in the media the last 5 months or so on these stop and frisk, maybe a little longer. And this lawsuit's been going on for over 5 years, and that really stems from a stop that was in the early 2000s, and they finally didn't get the class action together until 2008. So it'd be amazing to see if this really was the first we were hearing of it, how long it could continue without it being stopped. Which personally raises the question, how long will this mass surveillance continue until it can be reined in? Are we looking at a decade like this decision?
A lot of those people that got picked up after stop and frisk, all they had was like a Pepsi on them, and that's not legal in New York anymore. So they would get thrown in the. They got thrown in the soda tank.
The soda tank.
Sleep it off, boy.
Skittles and tea.
Yeah.
Okay, so the I guess I wanted to just bring up the fact that we are moving into Africa now. There was an article that came out that said that we have 4,000 to 5,000 personnel on the ground at any given time, which is more than we've ever had since the Somalia intervention that was the basis for the Black Hawk Down incident. So we're moving into Africa. And I haven't seen any talk about it on any of the major news networks other than this Reuters article that I was able to pull.
Well, the same people who are behind those media outlets are the same people who are surreptitiously behind the move into Africa. I want you to think about like driving through the suburbs and seeing like an Applebee's and a Walmart and Payless shoes, and all that could be in Africa. And all they got to do is get machetes, well, not machetes, but bulldozers and cranes and just rip right through it. And so when you think about the fact that there's this gigantic continent of space and population is something that is a concern, and possibly even getting away from populations of people is a concern for certain people, it makes sense that there's a push into Africa by more or less the military-industrial campaign that takes over undeveloped parts of the world. So it's so logical that it's happening. Development makes money, and so they want to move into there for that reason, or there's a push to move in there to make it their backyard, private, get away from the masses of poor and middle class resort land.
Okay,
There's a push for mass death and overhaul of all land in Africa.
And so
AIDS is encouraged.
in that context, what is like, where do property rights, since the bulk of us are libertarians, how far do property rights extend? Like, you know, this is, it's beneficial to first world countries to move into Africa because there's a tremendous amount of land mass and a tremendous amount of resources there, but it's basically, I assume that's basically going to be the 21st century equivalent of the, you know, genocide of the Indians, or the, you know, genocide of...
I hope not. Things like that can still be prevented.
How are we going to stop that, though? Like, that's what I foresee it being, is we're going to...
You saw Coney.
Have we got Coney?
I don't know. He was
He died out like a week after it happened.
As I understand it, he just died and no one actually caught him.
I wonder why it suddenly wasn't popular. Did something happen that maybe discredited the guy that made that? I don't know.
Going crazy.
That was part of it. I think it was also that people realized that just liking things on Facebook doesn't actually help you catch a guy who abducts children.
No, it does.
Well, you had just asked what we're going to do to stop the genocide, and all I really had was liking stuff on Facebook, so that really...
I shot a hole in your 1 point plan.
Well, as soon as our praise
can we
starts
talk
coming
about
on
the,
Facebook, then I think God could get involved, and you know he'll make shit happen.
Uh-huh.
Can we address the fact that there's like a black abyss that has joined us on this show?
What? Yeah. Hello, hi.
You wanna join us?
Do you still have
okay.
it muted?
My wife is watching Doctor Who, and apparently my microphone picks up every last pin drop. So I'm staying silent for all those who cannot speak.
Are you scared now? Is the Blair Witch still chasing you?
We should get Doctor Who to fix Africa.
Who
He
on
can
the
fix
show?
it.
Who on the
With
show?
his
has-
magic stick.
Who on the show has seen all the new Doctor Who?
I haven't seen all of it.
Yeah, but
There's
how
a
much?
lot of it.
Well, so
Who
much
saw
for
Breaking Bad on Sunday?
I think the last episode I saw was the one where everybody's stuck in traffic.
That's not very.
Africa.
What?
That's not very.
Africa. What are you talking about, Africa?
That's why I'm not pregnant.
This isn't a reality show.
All right. So my final discussion point was I wanted to discuss. This is something that came up with Kel and I when we were on vacation. Kez and I while we were on vacation. But I guess where do individual property rights in this kind of ties into the Africa discussion too. Where do individual property rights end and the rights of government, if government has any rights, extend as in dealing with certain international affairs? And the one that Kez and I got into an argument about was the Mexican drug cartels along the U.S. border. How does the panel?
It's not just along the U.S. border. It's throughout Mexico and into the U.S.
Yeah, throughout Mexico, throughout South America.
You seem to think that I'm in favor of like a military campaign into Mexico to overhaul it. My argument was that if we use all this Department of Defense money and resources for these BS campaigns to basically tribalize people, divide and conquer, and take their resources and screw over their leaders, if we use our DOD for that, well, if we finally get around to reforming things and using things right, and we still have an employable military force, can't we start leading goodwill missions where we actually go to those governments and say, hey, do you want our help? Not really for anything, but for some security forces, into dangerous areas and maybe some policing. I'm saying we can offer that. That can be a beacon that we offer to people, just a way of assisting. It doesn't have to be an invasion. Look, I say it over and over again, the Department of Defense of the United States is the single biggest employer of people in the whole world, and it's probably the most powerful entity as far as like organizations are concerned in the entire world, and it's not going to go away even if it's reformed. It's still there. There's still going to be arms there, and we can't let it fall back into the hands of the industrialists who will use it for their own gain. It might as well be used for something good. And it's not just some country around the world. There are they're right below us. We have very strong and important economic ties with them. And what's happening there is it's the most dangerous country in the world. It's a hellhole, and it could extend into our country. And at that point, those are the points where we'll beg for the days when all we had to do was talk and complain and debate about civil liberties, because we'll be occupied. We'll have people come into our houses with guns and raping our women and stealing our property, and war will come to us. I'd rather it not come to that. These are dangerous people who grew up in a culture of violence, and I just think there's nothing wrong with offering support from our powerful military as a peacekeeping mission and something to help them rebuild, because ultimately we're going to benefit greatly from a stronger, more economically dependent, safer Mexico. That's all I was saying about it. Who can disagree?
When I brought this up, I wanted to bring it up because it was I feel like it was the biggest point of contention that I could think of that we've had in a while, but I don't disagree with you. Like, a lot of what you say I agree with. I think that I guess my issue is how we would go about it, because right now, obviously,
it does seem to be a long time coming. I mean, it doesn't seem to have it's our military and those resources are obviously occupied in other hellholes throughout the world, none which have as many relations. I mean, everybody we know as family members there are from there somehow. Everybody we know, and it doesn't matter if you're from Texas or not. Everybody knows Mexicans, people of Mexican descent, people who are first-generation Mexicans. Everybody knows it. And, I mean, you get into issues about immigration, but who among us could say that if we were in those situations, we wouldn't want to leave that place? If we actually want to stop the bleeding, I mean, I know it's one thing to, get tougher on it, but why don't we assist? Why don't we offer aid? We're right here. We clearly have it. We're clearly related to them. We have family there. Why not offer it?
Well, I mean,
I think part of the question originally that you asked was going to talk about U.S. intervention in other major disasters like the oil spill and the meltdown in Japan
that was
after the
part of
tsunami.
it.
And I think that aid should always be offered, but true intervention into any of those disasters without, reasonable requests from the other nations' governments should not be done. We don't need to police or protect the entire world, but our assistance should always be available in the event of such catastrophes.
Well, they affect everyone. They don't just affect, I mean,
they're worldwide.
Right.
yeah, that's the reason.
I actually place human-on-human violence as a much higher and much more threatening catastrophe than any random natural catastrophe or industrial catastrophe.
It's pretty bad, but you got to consider how many people rely on food sources. Of like
from
say
the Gulf of Mexico.
But the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific Ocean, for one thing.
I almost think this is a non-issue because I don't think, no matter what the government was, I think in the end everybody would in some way want to come together and aid those in the name of the country that we're from. If you're not going to be on that list of people giving aid, then why should anybody ever give you aid if you want it?
Well,
I just don't even, I can't imagine a situation where no matter how libertarian or out there conservative or non-interventionist you were, where if there was an earthquake in, a place and you had the ability to give a little bit of money, maybe even through nonprofits, you wouldn't do it.
Oh, look at the Atlanta airlift. Look at how much we did so long for really just to stick it to somebody, to help some people out, but it was a political motivation. You can go through quite a bit of effort.
Those are, wartime politically charged issues. This is just talking about, hey, an earthquake fucked somebody over, stuff like that. And it's something that in the modern age, we, when something like that happens, take Haiti for instance, there is attention to what countries that are industrialized and have money to give do. And there's especially attention to how much America's going to give. And even if we overgive or sometimes shouldn't give, I don't think there's any situation where anybody would say, let's get rid of all foreign aid when people need it in the case of catastrophe. But people never talk about offering aid in the form of helping, violent situations in countries. They can think about starting wars there to get in between them.
Well, that's yeah.
And I just really want to, I don't even really mean this for any country but Mexico. I want to point it out as a very exceptional country as far as violence is concerned, and point out that the bastion of freedom and of being able to make it for yourself and safety is supposed to be right above it, but we're not doing anything about it really, except reporting it on the news. I just think it's really sad, and I would just much rather. I live in Texas. I mean, it's right there, and it's.
Well, yeah, but you have a point, Kel. I mean, they are next door neighbors, and they are in a much worse.
Oh, and as of NAFTA, they're a little bit more than our neighbors.
Well, you're right. They're very much integrated within our own country and within our own society.
Not a plug for NAFTA. Not a plug for
NAFTA. We have Canada to the north, which is clearly they can take care of things.
Canada's in a mess right now.
Well, but
I'm kidding.
Canada, I agree with you. I think that we should be providing more support to Mexico and helping provide not only easier access to citizenship in our country, but providing support to help bring them up. There has been a recent surge in car manufacturers like Ford moving to Mexico to lower their distribution costs and manufacturing costs as opposed to manufacturing overseas. And I hope that there is more progress in bringing better jobs there and improving the Mexican economy and making them as independent as possible.
Yeah, I mean, the real point is also never, it's for about 200 years going on now, maybe a little bit less, but our relationship has been a friendly one with Mexico. And if there are friends, you know, why do we spend so much money on campaigns with our enemies and almost zero with, you know, helping to improve that of our friends and our allies and our neighbors?
That's a really good question. I never actually really thought of it like that before, but that's incredibly, that's like very eye-opening.
I know it's and a lot of people wouldn't see it as like as a libertarian viewpoint, but I think after, you know,
a humanistic viewpoint though,
well, I think after you know, after libertarianism and a more free society is reached, I didn't think it would only reach a point where people would say, well, hey, why shouldn't we try to make this for everybody, but not in the way we used to, but in a way where we show them why it's so great.
Not in a destructive way, and not in a good, creative way, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, we might as well build up something similar. I mean, I can only call it something like a non-violent military, but I mean, let's face it. I mean, our biggest export is kind of our military at this point, and I mean, it's not going to go away. I hope it gets smaller and gets reformed, but that's just one thing I'd like to see it do. Other than that, I'm not really pro a whole lot of foreign aid as far as for getting into people's conflicts. I mean, I guess it all just depends on how related to us it really is. And I especially think there should be intervention when hostages and stuff like that, always. But, I mean, when we were talking last week, Champ, I didn't really want it to sound like I thought we should have some actual campaign into Mexico. Obviously, if that happened, it would only be like get some hydroelectric dams and a big embassy.
I mean, I think that, like, as far as intervention into Mexico, something probably should be done. Like, the fact that we're right next to Mexico and the fact that it's one of the most dangerous places in the world right now.
Because of the war on drugs.
It's tragic, yeah. It's the war on drugs. You know,
the war on cartels is what it is in Mexico. But I mean, basically, if the United States eliminated the client base for what the cartels are trying to sell, which for a long time wasn't a problem until the Mexican government decided to make it one, you wouldn't have the issue. I mean, it is the blatant point. And I mean, to my extreme libertarian beliefs, legalize it, decriminalize it, and you won't have the motivation to move it over. If you have it domestically, why would you want a cheap, shitty foreign import? I mean, you would alleviate it. That's you're not addressing the core of the problem. You're trying to.
I think people like having laxatives in their Coke. I don't know. It's like.
I agree with what you're saying, Jared, but I've read too much to know that even after legalization and decriminalization happen, like, the struggles in Mexico are just going to go on because it's just become a completely corrupted to the stem.
But that struggles in Mexico, that alleviates the American problem without getting into the Mexican issue as you're trying to be non-interventional.
When legalization happens, it doesn't mean that they stop selling and trading them around over there.
No.
In fact, it's still illegal in Mexico. And I don't believe in getting involved in changing people's laws unless they like specifically violate people's human rights. But it's still going to be illegal in Mexico. But even then, even if it became legal here, it would be a long process before these Mexican drug cartels just suddenly dismantled. They wouldn't just disappear and dissipate. They'd keep their arms, they'd keep their violent mentality, they'd keep their want for control and their disdain of authority. It's just not something that legalization here is going to
the point is it alleviates the American side of the problem without having to get with internal Mexican politics. Our problem with them is the violence is spilling over. The drugs are flowing in and violating whatever laws we have. Those are the two big issues here. So if you're able to alleviate them wanting to move in, they have their own problems and have to go through their own evolution within Mexico, but they have no more interest within the United States, and that's what we need to alleviate. And by doing it by legalization or at the least decriminalization, you do that in a non-interventionalist way. You just take away the motivation.
I understand that. One of my main points is I still have a big problem with the country that's our neighbor, and more than just a neighbor, a country where we share last names, family members, and in mass, I have a problem with human-on-human violence continuing the way it does. I have a problem with the kidnapping on the scale it does there. I mean, at some point, I get more sympathetic to the individual level than I do where there's like warfare going on, because that means you can't just enjoy your free life. And again, like if it's Paraguay or Kyrgyzstan or even China, it's not going to bother me as much. But when it's Mexico, and it's such an extreme situation, I do think we might as well use what we have. We might as well offer it in sort of a non-violent way, just to help the situation sort of in a more immediate way. It's something I'm more and more that I think about. What I really fear is somebody stepping into where I live and, you know, taking it over. And as a reality for me, where that comes from more than anything, except for maybe our own government, is some Mexican drug cartel moving across here. I mean, it just seems...
Okay, but so these motivations are personal, as most are, you know, in no sort of judgment way, based on personal fears of your liberty being taken away by an encroaching thing. But that's only because they're your neighbor. If what moves us is our knowledge of the situation, of the violence, of the injustice, whatever it is that motivates us as a society to give aid, knowledge alone, whether it's close or whether it's far away, the fact that it exists should motivate us the same. The fact that you're more motivated because they're close is solely a selfish one. It doesn't go to promote any wider idea of actually helping. You're isolating. You should help your neighbors. Well, no, the whole world is our neighbors, and it's all equal, whether it's across the border or across the globe, in my opinion. I just think proximity has.
At some point, I do separate ideal and look at reality. And if I could see the American government, the American military do something positive, it would be offer assistance in the form of arms and security to Mexico. And I'll separate to some degree ideal from reality in that point, because I'd rather.
And that reality is you have to deal with your physical borders rather than the invisible ones that kind of tie.
My reality is that if I do live this free life that I want to extend it to other people, and I think you got to start in the most immediate way by taking it to your neighbors, especially when your neighbors aren't just some, you know, it's not like our neighbors are just a situation where there's it's not like it's like Chicago or cities with high crime rates. It's the worst country in the world. And I can't see why we spend so much time through military action propagating when we, like, through violent military action, we could actually help by just, I don't know.
So what, we give money and arms to the corrupt Mexican government that is already releasing prisoners, and there's already a problem with second term. Like, that's the same thing in any sort of what would be deemed a civil war, like in Syria. Who do you support? The government committing war crimes or the rebels committing war crimes? Like, where does aid go unless it's a military action?
But I separate. I said it is a military action. It's just not. It's sort of like what was supposed to theoretically have happened in South Korea, where it was a policing. No, Iraq was an actual military campaign. South Korea was just a police action. And those have happened before. Countries have requested that of the United States and the United Nations in the past. But I wouldn't mind seeing that offered to Mexico in their time of need.
I agree, Cal.
It's just Mexico does affect us as Americans, and especially as Texans, Arizonans, and Californians, a lot more than Iraq or any of those countries do.
Absolutely agree, Cal.
I gotta go, guys.
Okay.
Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere.
It was nice seeing you guys again.
See ya.
Let freedom ring. Let
Oh.
freedom ring.
Yes, this is fun.
Easy.
Meantime, it was another meantime. Wait, the globe. Around the world in meantime.
Frank, I'll see you in a bit.
Okay. Are we gonna wrap it up there?
I guess everybody's leaving.
Yeah, everybody's
I mean, how do you take it off air without quitting it?
You sing a jingle and you do
Just take it off air and I won't leave.
I really.
It's me time. That was me time.
Yeah, really.